Today, folks, on EBN, the fall of Disney Star Wars. Notice I said Disney Star Wars, and how did we get here? From billion-dollar box office hits to fan outrage and franchise fatigue. What happened to Star Wars under Disney? In today's video, we trace the rise and fall of Disney Star Wars from the excitement of The Force Awakens to the backlash against The Last Jedi, the box office bomb of Solo, and the controversies surrounding the rise of Skywalker, The Acolyte, and other projects. We break down how Lucasfilm lost the trust of longtime fans like us, like you, why major projects were canceled or delayed, the rise of The Mandalorian and the cracks beneath it, and the behind-the-scenes drama, leadership missteps, and changing visions. Whether you're a die-hard original trilogy fan like us or just curious about what went wrong, this deep dive covers it all. Nick, it's 2012. They just announced Disney is buying Star Wars. And oh, by the way, the original cast is back. Could there be any more hype than that?
Man, I remember when I heard this news, I think you were the first person I called. I was
Of course I was.
Yeah, I was at work and I saw it pop up and I
was at work.
Yeah. And I literally walked outside, and I think I called you or texted you and was like, dude, Disney just bought Lucasfilm. And at the time, I was hyped because that was when the MCU was just kicking on all cylinders. And
I mean, to say things were going well is an understatement.
Yeah. So Disney gets Lucasfilm. They announced episodes 7, 8, and 9. And the original cast coming back, and the way Marvel was going, it was like, I mean, the hype was real, and I was super pumped, super excited. Then we got the Force Awakens.
We got the Force Awakens trailer.
Yeah, the first
trailer. I had tears at the end of that teaser when Han shows up on screen for the first time, and he says, "Chewie, we're home." Yeah, and I was like, "This is really happening."
Yeah.
We're getting the original. It's been since 1983, Nick.
Yeah.
And 29 years later, this thing is about to happen. Actually, it's 32 years later when the film actually comes out. Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah. And so there was, the hype from the trailers and the little TV spots and all that all the marketing pushed into it, and fans were excited. Then we went and saw the movie, and I was kind of like, all right, not bad. I like it more than the prequels. I hate that Han Solo died. Luke wasn't there to the end, but guess what? We're getting him in the next one. So I'm gonna not nitpick and be so hard on this one. Since we're getting Luke in the next one, maybe we'll get some flashback stuff with Han, Luke, and Leia, with all them being on screen together, all speculation. And of course, the lead up to that was super hyped up.
Now, The Force Awakens did have some things that I'm like you, okay? Actually, I'm way more than you. I loved it. I thought, to me, it was instantly the fourth best Star Wars movie ever. To me, it was, oh my gosh, Luke at the end. I've got tears. Let's do this. He's going to be back. But I in my own fan heart and blindness, I turned a blind eye to Han dying, to Kanja Club.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so dumb. And then Ray walking by Chewbacca, or Chewbacca walking by Leia as Leia embraces Rey after Han's death, and not Chewie.
Yeah,
Chewie was just like, no biggie. I mean, so many awful things, and the thing that we've said it the most. You just had a Star Wars movie with the original cast, and you go ahead and finish that, Nick.
And you couldn't get them all on screen at the same time.
Ridiculous.
And at least one shot. when all this was coming out back then, the Cobra Kai season 1 came out, and everybody's like, "Look, this is the gold standard. This is how you bring back old characters, introduce new ones." They
Yeah.
completely nailed it. But when Force Awakens came up, there was so much hype that I think a lot of us had, nostalgia glasses on. You
Sure, I
know,
did.
and a lot of that stuff that we notice now, we didn't really notice at the time. You
Nope.
know,
That's what I was trying to say. And now I
yeah,
hate the movie.
yeah,
I'll never
yeah,
watch it again.
yeah. Me neither. I'll never watch none of those sequel trilogy movies ever again.
No.
And I would never recommend anybody else watching them either.
No. Why would you want to torture yourself?
Yeah, not me.
Yeah. Yeah. The dogs agree.
Yeah,
The dogs agree. Screw the sequel trilogy.
yeah.
So look, major projects. So many projects, Nick, have been canceled under
Tons.
Lucasfilm. And remember,
Directors, writers, also.
we're talking about the fall of Disney Star Wars and how we got here to this moment,
Yeah,
where the future is bleak. So yeah, all of these canceled projects, we've done videos on them. You've mentioned it in one of the videos we recently did, where they walk out on stage and they announce all of these things.
Yeah.
It's like overpromise, underdeliver. That's what Kathleen Kennedy and her regime has done. That's actually what her tombstone should read: overpromised, underdelivered. I mean, that's that's her in a nutshell, right there.
Mhm.
All of these things. I think that they've canceled and shelved more projects than they've actually finished during her
100%.
time.
I know Tom over at Midnight's Edge actually had a running list of like writers, directors, and I think projects listed versus ones that actually happened and came out. And the list for everybody that's been fired or canceled, whatever, is way longer than the list of stuff that they've actually done.
Right.
You know,
I agree with that. And it definitely shows you when you're announcing all of these things and you can't fulfill it. I'll give you a pass on one or two. That's okay. Stuff happens. I totally get that. But man, when you have the amount of fired writers and directors and things in her regime, I can't think of any other franchise that has fired this many people. George Lucas had falling outs with people. George Lucas fired some people, but nothing like what Kathleen Kennedy has done in her regime as the president of Lucasfilm. Now, one thing that brought everybody together after the sequel trilogy, Nick, was The Mandalorian. The flagship show that started it all with Disney Plus. When they released Disney Plus, the streaming service, they did it under the flagship show of The Mandalorian. This is why you want to subscribe. We're getting back to Star Wars. Check it out. Here's The Mandalorian.
yeah.
But it did have some cracks beneath it. I don't think that as good as The Mandalorian was, and I love The Mandalorian, don't get me wrong. I love it. I love season 1 and 2. Season 3 was atrocious. But it did have some cracks beneath it, Nick. And one of the cracks I would say is
Frog Lady.
Frog Lady was a crack, for sure. But the show, poorly named, it's not about the Mandalorian being a bounty hunter at all.
They're terrible at naming.
It's the lone wolf and cub story. It's as much about Grogu, if not more, about him than Din Djarin's The Mandalorian. And then when you get to season 3, it's not about Din Djarin's The Mandalorian at all. It's about Katie Sackhoff. She's a Mandalorian. Look, we'll just keep the title, but it's about her. They didn't have enough story to tell. There was a real lack of foundation in terms of story with The Mandalorian. And then as it proceeds, you start getting some of these sequel trilogy tie-ins, and that is a major turnoff for the majority of fans.
Yeah, big time. Which they did in season 3. A lot of tie-ins to the sequel trilogy. Because at the time there was all the rumors going around in the hope that they're gonna retcon the sequels and
I'm a foolish, you know, wear my heart on my sleeve. I so wanted it to happen, and at one point, I was convinced it was going to happen because that's how
yeah.
badly I wanted it.
Yeah, I saw a path for them to do it, with the whole, world between worlds stuff
Could have
and
done it.
all that. There was a path forward for them to do it,
Yeah,
but they're not going to do it. They're never going to do it. But I was right there in that camp too. I was like, man, this actually could be happening.
right.
Look at the
We're getting all the Civil War news. A
yeah.
lot of people have said that the Civil War at Lucasfilm is ridiculous and never happened, but you know personally from an
Mhm.
insider that you trust and believe, and I trust him as well. He has given you some firsthand accounts
Yeah,
of things.
on set firsthand accounts of
Everything at
on the set
Lucasfilm
of
is
the
not kosher.
Mandalorian. Yeah, no. There was a lot of I don't know if you could really call it, a civil war, but there was definitely some disagreements and some back and forth between KK's Cam and Favreau and all them.
Right. And what's happened
And
to John Favreau? We never see him nor hear from him.
no, not at all. So no clue. Maybe after KK's gone, maybe he'll come back and start being more, upfront and kind of out there on what he's doing. But right now, yeah, it's like all we hear about is phony baloney.
I mean,
Uh,
it's really funny about Favreau too. Like in his last interview, we covered it. You weren't here when we covered it on our live show, but he was being interviewed, and like all of his responses were super short, like almost to the point where he was like, "I'm not going to talk about that,"
yeah,
and like giving them nothing. Like it's almost like he just the tone of the interview. It's like as if to say, "I'm doing this because I have to.
hmm
I don't want to be here, talk about this, and be asked these questions."
yeah,
You know, and that's sad because at one time I had a lot of faith in Favreau.
yeah. I mean, after season 2 of Mando, once again, you know, the nostalgia was there. With the Return of Luke, the Luke version that we wanted. Where he's
Yeah,
going in and just cleaning house,
right.
which we never got in the sequels. And so, it's there's stuff about Mando season 1 and 2 that I like. I definitely had some issues with seasons 1 and 2, but overall, I thought it was a decent enough show.
Well, would
But
you agree that the peak of Disney Star Wars was the return of Luke in the final episode
oh
of season
yeah,
two?
for sure. Because a
I don't
lot of
think there's any
fans,
contest.
yeah, because a lot of fans that dropped off after the sequel trilogy heard about these first 2 seasons of Mando, and people actually start coming back.
Yeah,
And then what happened after Mando season 2?
Gina Carano and Star Wars Theory getting attacked by Pablo Hidalgo,
Yeah, and Gina Carano gets outed and is
and
no
that did not
longer.
help. And then you've got a long list of train wrecks after that. The Book of
Yeah,
Boba Fett, Ahsoka.
yeah,
We got to mention the Power of Many.
yeah.
The
The Acolyte.
Acolyte
Yeah,
was the worst thing Star Wars ever could have done. The Kenobi show wasn't a hit.
mm-mm.
There was a lot of stupidity there. And then Mando season 3 comes out. It's awful.
Yeah,
The only thing that they've done that gave them any like legitimate stability to me is the animated shows, and then you've got Andor season 1 and 2. Those things gave some stability to the franchise, but they weren't like groundbreaking wins. This is a momentum shift. Now we're headed back in the right direction. None of that happened. Star Wars has fallen off with all of these decisions that they've done.
yeah,
And the truth is, as I look back, the return of Luke and the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian was only a temporary fix.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to last. It wasn't meant to last unless a retcon happened.
Yep.
If a retcon wasn't going to happen, then it was just a good moment. And that's all it was. Even though it was the peak of Disney Star Wars. It was a great Star Wars moment. Don't get me wrong. It was a great Star Wars moment. But you're still, look where you're headed. You're still headed to that iteration of Luke Skywalker, of the original cast, of flying Mary Poppins, Princess Leia, of all of that crap.
Luke tries to kill his nephew.
All of it.
You know, it's ridiculous.
So, and it really doesn't matter. Like, it's almost like, even now, if you don't retcon all of that, the fans of old have left.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you retcon that now and have a story where you have the original cast.
No.
How are you going to do that?
Yeah, there's no way they could do it at this point. And have it work and make sense.
Star Wars is now a franchise where they've made such terrible decisions, and they've ruined it, and they've hurt it so badly. They're just not going to be able to overcome from that.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm one of those people. You know, Star Wars is my favorite franchise of all time. You know, it's been a part of my life ever since I can remember.
Same.
And the fact that I just don't care about any of it anymore. I mean, the original trilogy, I'll still watch those movies to this day.
Of course.
And I still love them. And the Kenner toys, and the games, you know, so, you know, there's still a lot of stuff for me to still be nostalgic on and still watch and read and play and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, the franchise just is just dead. It's dead.
I completely agree. So we're going to wrap this up, guys. Let us know in the comments. Here we are talking about the fall of Disney Star Wars and how we got here. Let us know in the comments if there's anything that we failed to mention, anything at all. You know, we didn't mention the Solo movie. You know, there's
been so much stuff.
There's been so much bad. There's been so much bad. And, you know, by the way, we have a documentary that takes you through all of those things. Our sequel trilogy documentary. Check it out on our channel. But, you know, thank you very much for being here. As always, we are, you are, EBN. Appreciate it very much. And, guys, we'll see you on the next one.
Bye, guys.